Man, oh man, guys, today we're gonna be working on something freaking awesome. What I've got here is a portable power station that I built myself, and I'm gonna show you guys how I built it. So I kind of already have it built. I tried making a video on it before, and the video just didn't work out. I just didn't have the right size wire. It was a little bit too big. I kind of had a jerry rig, and I just didn't like how I really had it and how I had it set up. So I'm gonna show you guys all the mistakes that I made, and hopefully you guys will make the same mistakes. And you guys can build this as well. So I've got a case guard. This thing will hold a 26 amp hour battery perfectly in there with more room for a surprise that I want to put on there later here in the summer, a couple of weeks or whatever. But this thing can hold a 26 amp hour battery. That is well more than what you need to charge your phone batteries and GoPro batteries if that's what you're doing. So if you just want to charge your phone battery, you can find the smaller boxes from Plano. They have they can fit like a 7 amp hour battery in there, and that can charge your phone or a couple GoPros or whatever for a day or a weekend trip or whatever you got. This thing will be able to charge your phone batteries, your GoPro batteries, a computer, a couple times, anything that you need to do on this thing, can charge it for maybe a couple of weeks depending on how much you use it. But I just got this because I want to make sure I'm going to have power, enough power for a week trip if I do go out on my kayak or take my car somewhere for a week, you know, go camping for a week, something like that, to where I can have power. I know that I will if I don't have electrical hookup. So I'm going to show you guys everything you need to build this thing. And other than that, I'm going to get started. I'm going to show you guys how I'm going to actually take this all apart and show you guys the holes that I had to drill and everything like that, and I'm going to show you guys how to wire it up. So other than that, stick around. We're gonna get to work on this thing, and I hope you guys enjoy. All right, here we go. All right, guys, the first big thing you're gonna need is this ammo box. Now I have the big one. This is the large, I guess. They do have a smaller, medium size. The small you can fit like a 7 amp hour battery. The medium you can fit like a 12, and this one can definitely fit a 26 or smaller, a couple 7s. Whatever you want to fit in this big one or the small one, you can get a size, whatever size ammo box you guys would like. Next on the list, you're going to need a 26 amp hour battery. You're going to need a 3/4 of an inch step bit like this, or 3/4 of an inch drill bit or hole bit. And you're going to need a box cutter. You're going to need 3 drill bits. The first one is going to be a 5/32 inch drill bit for the holes on your fuse box. The second one is going to be a 7/32 inch drill bit for the holes in the alligator clips. And the third drill bit is going to be a 3/8 inch drill bit for the holes on the LED lights. You're going to need a hole saw bit kit, preferably one with a 1 1/8 size hole saw. You're going to need a drill. You're going to need 16 gauge wire. I use just red and black for positive and negative. Now on my battery, they don't have the actual blade connectors. They actually just have holes for the screws to go in. But you're going to need either two screws like this or the blade connectors. These are the blade connectors. You can get these ones like this. These are for 14 to 16 gauge wire. And you can also get 12 gauge wire and 10 gauge. I would recommend getting at least 12 gauge as well, because when you have to combine the two wires together, you're going to need a little bit bigger hole than just this 16 to 14 gauge. I forgot the name of these, but I call them ring screws. These are to screw on the alligator clips to clip to your wire. You're going to need some wire snips. You're going to need wire crimpers / cutters. And you're going to need these wire strippers. Now these are very, very good to use. I actually like these because they work a lot better than these wire strippers / cutters. These just strip it and pull it perfectly. You don't break any wires like this one, but these are good for the wire crimpers. All right, guys, so here's the box. I'm going to start off with the first mistake that I did. I tried drilling the first hole here, and the one big mistake that I did is I didn't open up the inside of the box and show you guys what the supports look like in here. So these are the supports, and see how I kind of drilled right in the middle of that support. That's kind of like, you kind of want to stay away from those. Like I did on this hole, I drilled right in the corner of that support there. So just look before you drill to figure out where the supports are. But the other mistake that I did is I used a hole saw bit to actually try making these these holes. So the holes that I used, it was a little bit too big here, and what it does is it makes the hole, it just makes it too big for the actual switch to fit. So here's the switch that I'm using in each one of those, and what you want to do is use a 3/4 of an inch step bit is what I had, or you can find another 3/4 inch drill bit or whatever, but the 3/4 inch drill bit fits perfect. And then what you want to do is on these switches here, they've got little tabs on there to actually hold them in. And if you can, find a box cutter like this, and all you want to do is, like on this one here, you can see like there's little divots on there to just make it a little bit more room for the clips to fit in, because it won't go in unless you have those little divots. So these ones are pretty much perfect. I can slide them in. It takes a little bit of pressure, but they pop right in. And other than that, just make sure that you don't use a hole saw bit, and make sure you use 3/4 of an inch drill bit to drill them in. So I'm going to install all my switches here. You can arrange them any way you want or set them the same as mine. But I'm going to throw all my switches in now. Alright, so I got my switches installed. The next thing that I want to do is I want to install all of the actual components that they control. So like the cigarette lighter, I've got my USB, and I've got the actual main power source is the USB, and it shows the voltmeter in the middle. So how I like to do these is literally you just need the hole saw bit, and the hole saw bit that I use here is, let me see here, this is going to be 1 1/8. This is the 1 1/8 hole saw bit, and they just straight down here, use a drill, and just drill your holes wherever you need them. Just remember, watch out for the supports, and once you actually put those in, just make sure that you put them in the right way, because you need to unscrew the bottom piece right here, and just make sure they go in straight. And then whenever you flip it over to screw them in, like this, mine kind of hits that little support right there. So just be careful whenever you do that. And whenever you tighten it down, just make sure that it is straight. And if you do have to turn it just a little bit like this and then tighten down, and it will cinch all the way down, you might have to do that, but I just keep it straight. So once you get that tightened down, you can fit all your other pieces in there, however many you have. If you got 3, or if you got more, or only 2, or whatever, just tighten those down, and let me get those tightened in. I'm going to move you guys to the next step. Alright guys, so the next step I did is I drilled my holes for these alligator clips. There's not a lot of uses for these, but if you do end up needing something to clip on for LED lights or something like that, I just put them on there just in case. But what I did is I just kind of found a spot where I wanted them, and I just took them and I just scraped the little start holes here, and it just showed where they're going to meet at. And then I just took a 7/32 inch drill bit, and I just drilled the holes where the first scrape was, and they fit perfectly in there. So I got both of those in there. I'm going to throw those in there, and then I'm going to move to the actual mounting the fuse panel and the lights on there. So let me get these screwed in. Alright guys, so I got the 2 alligator clips in. Now we're going to be moving on to the fuse box. So I already have the fuses in there, and I've already got my single screw that I kind of have it holding on right now, but all you're going to need is 2 machine screws. Definitely not this long, but this is just what I kind of have right now until I go to the store and get some new ones. But all you pretty much do is you got to take off your cap here, and take out your my single screw. You'll have 2, but underneath you want to just kind of look at and see where it can mount at. So the smaller ones can be a little bit trickier, but this big one is a lot easier. So all I did is I just kind of lined it up straight, and I just kind of eyeball it, made sure it looks straight, and then I just took the drill and my drill bit. This is going to be a 5/32 inch drill bit, and I just kind of made one single, like a second with the drill running, just to show a little spot on there, and then I just finished out the hole there, and then I put it back on, and I lined it up to make sure it's straight, and I did the same thing. I just drilled just like a second right here just to show a little indent on the plastic, and then I just drilled that out, and then I have 2 perfect holes right here. Once you get those drilled, you would just take your fuse box, set it in here, and you're gonna just take your screw, and once you get that all drilled in on the front side here, all you have to do is take your screw and then screw it on, and your fuse box will be all set in place. Alright guys, and for the last 2 holes you're going to have to drill, this is for your 2 lights, if you want to have the lights. Now these are the really small LEDs, and they've got really small, like 20 gauge wires at the end, so they're kind of complicated. but that's why the other wire crimps actually work a lot better. But to the hole that you need to drill for these is going to be a 3/8 size drill bit, and I literally just eyeballed it for each side, just made it look equal, and then I just drilled the 2 holes. And once you install those, all you have to do is just unscrew your nut and just slide the wire out of the nut into the hole. Just feed it through. You're just gonna have to get a little bit of force, and it just pops right in, and then you're gonna have to thread your screw back on the inside of it. So let me get the other one in, and your whole box should pretty much be all put together. Now the next step is to start wiring. So I'm gonna actually wire this whole box up first, and then I'm gonna show you guys how to crimp all your wires, how to connect all the wires together. Like I said, it's really easy. Don't get discouraged because it's really simple once you actually understand the concept. So let me get my lights back in, and I'm going to start wiring this puppy up, and I'm going to show you guys how I wired it. All right, guys, so I already have some pre-cut wire that I cut off the spool, but if you don't know how to cut the wire off, you usually just use these snips and or wire cutters, and you can just cut them off from the spool. Now, what I'm going to show you guys first is how to strip the wire to put one single blade connector on. Now, when you want to do this, these come in really handy because they just strip the wire perfectly. These can strip them, but it's just a little bit tougher. But what you're going to do is just find your like 16 gauge wire slot. You just crimp it down, and then you want to pull it apart and see how it kind of strips it. It does work. It works really well with this thicker wire, but when you get down to those LED lights that are really, really small, this comes in handy because you got to get the little 12 gauge, or the little 20 gauge slot. So I just like using these personally. They're a little bit on the expensive side, but it's worth it if you plan on doing this quite a bit. Now, what you do is just find your little hole, and you just strip it, just like that. Strips the wire, and you just twist your wire like this. You get your blade connector. You thread on your blade connector here, and then you find your crimper part, 14 to 16, and then you just crimp on your wire. Now when you crimp it, it has this little indent right here that pushes it on there, and you can do it on both sides so you know that the wire is on there. I like to do that because I don't want them coming apart, but when you pull them, I'm like jolting it back and forth and pulling it and doing whatever, you know it's not going to come off. So that's how you install one blade connector to your wire. Now to do 2 wires together, you're going to want to snip a little bit more insulation off of your wire, because when you put on 2 wires, it makes it a little bit thicker and it makes it a little bit tougher to wind them up. So you're just going to twist both ends just like I did before. And then you're going to kind of put them on a cross like this. I really like doing this because it makes them pretty much combine themselves together. And you're just going to twist them until the end is all twisted together. And you want them even. See how both of the rubber is even, the insulation is even on each side. You're going to take your blade connector, slide it on there, make sure these are kind of together. And I just like pushing and twisting, and then make sure that the insulation is on the inside so there's no copper showing on the outside. And like before, you're going to take the 14 to 16 slot, and you're going to crimp that side. And then I like to spin it over, and I like to crimp the other side. So then, whenever you're pulling or moving or anything like that, nothing is coming off. So now this one kind of actually slipped off, but I did break the actual wire, but just be careful with that. And then the third way is just with the ring connector that I have. It's exactly the same way, just like before, but this one is kind of a little bit thicker. So if you do come across there, don't have the right kind of wire or whatever, you just want to kind of fold your wire over to make the surface area a little bit bigger. But the same way, just like the other 2 blade connectors, you find the right size hole, and then you just crimp it down, just like so. You can spin it if you'd like to, but just like that, it's coming together, and it won't come back apart. So just like that. Now this is going to be for every single one of your blade connectors. Now when I'm going through how to install all the wires, you're really going to do this for every single end of the wire. Now it's really simple. If you guys need to practice or whatever, just just make sure that you guys have the hang of it, because I like to make sure that none of the wires are coming off. Like this one kind of came off because you don't want, like, see how that kind of like pulled out. I don't understand why that actually did that, but just make sure that they're both in there. And if you have to redo it and recut a wire, I mean, don't worry about it. I've definitely had to do that a whole bunch of times. Alrighty guys, so I got everything wired up, and I'm going to show you guys how to actually go through this. So what I first like to do is I like to get my main power, which is my voltage, and this main power switch. So how I like to set this apart first is this switch. If this switch is not activated, nothing else will turn on. So if I power the switch on, then I can use everything else. If this switch isn't turned on, I can't use any of these other components with it. So what I like to do first is I like to run my positive wire from the middle prong, and I like to go to this ground right here. So first I will literally take, and I already have everything made up, so if you guys follow like I just did before, just make up you can just measure and make sure that all your wires will fit. So I'll literally take my middle wire and put it on here first, and this is going to go right to the prong right there. And then the second wire will go to your positive on the accessory that you're working with it, and that's going to go onto there. All right, so you already have 2 wires, so that just already circulates that this switch is working with this component. And then you're just going to take your lock washer and put that there, and then you're going to screw it on tight. I'm not going to put mine on super tight right now just because I don't have a wrench. But there we go. Just make sure you measure. First you put the wire up to here, then you run it over to here and you measure. You can cut it and then just put both of your ends on. So now this next step is the fun part. This is where you start linking everything together. So all these components, the ground wires, first you're going to have your ground wire, which is the gold. You're going to have your accessory mount. So the middle prong is going to be for your accessory. So we'll just say this switch right here is for my lights. So my light positive wires will run to that. And then this third prong is going to be to the circuit box. So this wire right here is going to run to that prong. So what I'm going to do first is I'm going to set all my grounds up. So my grounds are going to be each of these gold terminals here, and we're going to run each of them. So I've already got them all connected. This is what you're going to have to do. This is how you connect both the wires together. But when I bring this over here, all my wires are already connected. So I'm just going to start connecting them, and you guys can see I've already measured all my wires up and put the prongs on. And then this one's going to go onto the gold prong here. And this is the one that I first drilled. That's my screwed up hole, but it still stays. This is going to be my negative ground here. We're going to go to the gold prong on this one. And we're going to go on this one. It just has 2, but there's a positive and negative. Your negative is always your ground. This over here is going to be the gold prong. And then I have mine on the outside for my negatives. So I'm just going to slide that on there. I've got my screw already. Normally you'd have a lock screw or lock washer with it. Mine's inside. You're going to tighten that up. You're going to run this one to the other gold prong. Here's your negative prong on the left hand side here. And then your other outside prong is right there. And then you can run my lock washer and my nut. And like so. And then don't forget your lights. So on this prong, on my last one, I have 4 wires running. So this wire runs to here, and then it goes to my ground, which goes to the my negative battery terminal. And then here are my 2 grounds for my lights. So I have 4 interchange here. Each one of these run to each other. And then this one comes and it goes to this terminal and then to my negative terminal on my battery. So when I first started with this, with these 2, that circulates that, and all my negatives are together, and then to my negative terminal, and then both of my wires. Now, when I connect my positive terminal wire, this runs to my positive terminal of my battery. I'm going to connect this to my main power switch. Now, when you do that, I just have this and this operating right now because I already have power. It's already hooked up to my battery over here. So I have my positive and then my negative wire switch that's running to my battery. I can show you guys real quick. So if you delete these wires, because this is for my lights, these are for my lights right here, I just have my negative and my positive. So now if I bring those back over there for my lights, and I flip this up, and I bring this over, that will power on, and it shows I have 12.4 volts of battery life left in my battery. Now nothing else works because I don't have any positive lights or any positive switches hooked up. So we're gonna get to that. All right guys, so now I like to just kind of start, there's like a lot more space to work with. So whenever I do this, here's my one wire that I've already attached. So I'm gonna attach this to what I want to power, which is my cigarette lighter, okay? And then you're gonna plug it into the middle prong, which is for your accessory. So now when you hook that up, you're gonna have this far prong left. So whenever you do that, all you're gonna do is take your other wire, make sure you measure it, and you're gonna run it right to your fuse box. And that has the 5-amp fuse in there. I've got 3 5-amp fuses for all my accessories, and I've got 1 3-amp fuse for my LED lights because they don't take that much amperage. Next, we're gonna be working on my lights. So this is where it makes it look a lot complicated than it really is, but it's really not. So I'm gonna first take, or actually let me do this so I stay the same. I'm gonna take my accessory, which is this wire. I've got them all wired up together. And I'm gonna run it between this here, and I'm gonna run it between here. And it makes it look makes it look like a whole bunch of wires are in here and it's messy, but this is how I put it on there, and I thought I was gonna put the switch somewhere else, but I didn't. So I have to run it all the way across, which it makes it look a lot messier than it is, but it's not. So this is your accessory. This is what it's powering, which is your middle switch, or your middle prong, and then your last prong on the end here is for your fuse box. And you're gonna plug that in here, because this 3-amp powers the lights. So when we come over here, this is already hooked up. We've already done this in the beginning. This is our main power switch. So we're gonna move over to our alligator clips. Now these two are separate here. So I've already got a screw on there. I gotta take the screws off of them. And somehow I have to combine those two together to get power out of the switch that I wanna power. So what I've done is I've taken 2 ring terminals on each end to connect both of them together. And then this goes to my switch. So what I'm gonna do is run them underneath all my wires. And I'm gonna hook that terminal up there. I'm gonna hook this terminal up there. So both terminals are on, so all it is a linking wire. And then the accessory mount is the middle one. So you hook that up first, and you have your last prong left. Don't forget to put your lock washer and nut on that prong to keep your wires secure. And then lastly, you're going to run your wire from the last prong on the end to the fuse box. There's one final step you got to take. So this is the one that powers your USB cord. So I'm going to first do the accessory that it powers. So I'm going to go to the middle prong right here. I don't know if you guys can see that with all my wires, but there's a middle prong. And I'm going to take that. I'm going to put it on there. I'm gonna run it underneath all my other wires. I'm gonna hook it to the accessory that it powers. And we have one last prong on the end. Hopefully you guys can see that. There's the one last prong, and that's for our fuse box. So now I'm gonna hook that up to that. Make sure my wires are out of the way. And there we go. Everything is hooked up. So now, when you fold this over, you wanna make sure though, that you have your battery hooked up here. In the beginning, I never really said that, but in the beginning, just make sure that you have this ran. You don't have to do that in the beginning to hook it up to your battery. You can just run this wire and let it hang over here. Just make sure you measure it to make sure that it will reach your battery. But when I fold it over, and I turn it on, it's gonna show me 12.3 volts. And then say I wanna look at my USB here. When I flip it open, I switch that and it lights up. And then if I want to come over here, that switch lights up there. If you can see that, that'll switch on and it's powering my cigarette lighter. This light will power these 2 alligator clips. And then this right here, I don't know if you guys will be able to see, but it will power both of my lights. So it's actually really simple. You guys can pause the video and see how you guys have to hook it up. Just make sure that you measure each of your wires to see how far they are running to each component, because that's the main part, is to measure each wire to see how far it needs to reach to get to the destination it needs to go. Like I said, it looks really confusing. It looks like a jumbled mess, but when you sink it down, it's really not that bad. But other than that, that's going to be it for wiring up the box. Alrighty guys, so in here is all the ends I've snipped off and just kind of kept in there to show you guys, and like some of my mess ups that I made. But all these are like the wires I had to trim up and stuff. And then what I like to do with these, since this battery just barely doesn't fit, I like to stuff just a little bit of foam in there. If you guys have any foam, this is like 1/2 inch thick maybe, and I just like to stick foam on each side just so the battery can't really move around. And then what I'm going to do is in this area, I'm going to later I'm going to make another video of hooking this up to solar, so I can charge this with the sun, with solar energy, and I don't have to worry about having a outlet or house wires or anything like that to be able to recharge this battery. So I'm going to hopefully be able to link that into this. And like I said, guys, it's really not that hard. Once you really dial down and think about it and really want to do it, it's not really that bad. This is literally my first box I've ever made, and this is the second time putting it together, because the first time I had 12 gauge wire and this is 16. 16 is a lot thinner and it's a lot easier to work with. It's a lot more flexible, and it just works a lot better. But what makes it look a lot complicated than what it really is these light wires. These things are like 20 gauge or 22 gauge wires, so they're really, really thin, and it's really hard to find something to really snip those. Now that the one wire snip that I had, the insulation cutters, those are like the go-to. They have 22 and 20 gauge. Sometimes they don't really work. You have to kind of adjust them a little bit. You have to like push on the edge, but they do get them to work. So that's the overview of the box that we got wired. Alrighty guys, so hopefully you enjoyed the power box video that I made. Hopefully you guys stuck around and actually finished this puppy. This thing is gonna work out great, because I got a lot of different uses I can use for it. Sorry I haven't been posting though. I haven't been posting for the last 2 weekends just because in Michigan here it's just been downpouring the last couple days. And actually, like last week, it's just been rainy and cold and just terrible weather. So I haven't gotten out on the water, but the next week here is supposed to be all sunny. So the next 3 or 4 days, I'm hopefully going to be out on the water catching some fish. So you guys will see that in the upcoming videos on Sunday here. I'm going to be posting this video tonight. It's a weekday, but I want to at least get a video out for you guys so you can check this thing out. And if you guys have any questions on this box, don't hesitate to ask me any questions. Comment down below. And if you guys need to get a hold of me any other way, I'm on YouTube here, I'm on Instagram, and I'm on Facebook. So other than that, I'm going to see you guys in the next video. Hopefully I'm going to catch some fish, and I hope you guys go out and get you guys some materials to make you a portable power station. So alright guys, I'll see you next Sunday.